The Buffalo Bills appear to be tweaking their offensive identity. That evolution couldn't be more evident than in their selection of Utah tight end Dalton Kincaid in the first round of the 2023 NFL Draft. Kincaid was one of the top 20 players in the NFL Draft, but at a position I didn't think they truly needed. Well, not early anyway. The Bills' current starter at the position, Dawson Knox, has developed into a very good starter, one that earned a contract extension that will pay him on average $13 million a season, which is ranked 7th among all tight ends. But none of that stopped general manager Brandon Beane from trading the team's first and fourth round picks to select another tight end. Kincaid is the new generation of tight ends, a cross between a tight end and wide receiver. A tight end that is flexed out just as often as he's in line. Kincaid has been a traditional wide tight end, so in line only 39.6% of his snaps. The rest of his snaps have been from out wide and in the slot. Over the course of his career, Kincaid took 48.8% of his reps from the slot, including 55.1% in his final season at Utah. That's where I think he'll spend a majority of his time early in his career in Buffalo, and why I think that his learning curve won't be as steep in the Bills' offense. When the Bills' offense was at its best, the offense ran through the slot with Cole Beasley. Beasley knew how to win quickly against zone or man, and he did most of that winning from the slot position over the middle of the field in the short to intermediate range. That is Kincaid's wheelhouse. Over the last 2 seasons, 70 of Kincaid's 138 targets came from the slot position. That sort of production against nickel corners and linebackers is impressive at a shade under 6'4", 246 pounds. Of Kincaid's 1,400 yards and 16 touchdowns at Utah, 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns were no deeper than 19 yards. And that's because he understands coverages. Better yet, he understands leverage and how to exploit it. On this play, Utah is in an empty set against Kincaid's former team, San Diego State. The defense appears to be playing quarters coverage, with the inside backer heavily shaded inside. He has one job: don't let Kincaid cross his face. If Kincaid breaks outside, the backer has a slot defender ready to jump the route. Again, one job: wall off Kincaid. Kincaid slowly attacks that leverage. He closes the horizontal head start, width that the defender had. The defender's probably telling himself, with this leverage, there's no way Kincaid is going to run an in-breaking route. Well, he was wrong. Kincaid sharply breaks inside and bursts across the face of the defender. Free access to the middle of the field, all because Kincaid attacked the perceived leverage and accelerated out of his break. It's this type of awareness, processing of coverages, and trust that allows him to feast on coverages, routinely finding the soft spots over the middle of the field. He possesses the spatial awareness and body control that basketball players develop from playing the sport, and it's evident in all facets of his game. And he puts it all together in the slot option package. Slot options were the backbone of the Bills' offense when it ran through Beasley. Generally, the receiver is reading the spin of coverage and leverage of the nearest defenders. In this two-man route concept called Gotti, the boundary receiver would run a go route, with Beasley running the option route. At the top of his route, Beasley can break out, in, or simply sit. On this play, the defender starts with inside leverage as the Titans show a single high safety look early. So Beasley releases slightly outside, but the coverage spins to a 2 high safety look. So the in and out routes are taken off the menu. So Beasley sits and reels the pass in. It'll be nice to see this easy button concept back in the offense with Kincaid. He uses the same body language that Beasley used to pivot away from defenders while moving into open green to be QB friendly. But what separates him aside from his size is his ability to gain yards after the catch. And it starts with his receiving ability. Kincaid does a great job of looking passes in, catching it with his hands while getting his body in an optimal position to transition into a runner. Rather than running towards the boundary as the ball is en route, he begins to rotate his body by turning clockwise, so that when he catches it, he can transition back upfield to gain maximum yardage. Here he runs the option route away from the hook to curl defender, and doesn't fight the pass that is low and outside. He works with the flow of the ball, quickly turns upfield and converts it into a first down. Kincaid's ability to read the leverage, smoothly pivot his body away from the nearest defender, while non-verbally telling the quarterback, "I'm ready for the throw," are all important. Because a lot of times these two high teams have their corners trapping. So if he were to just run an out route, the corner would key in quicker. So the skills on display here disguise the route and allow Kincaid to gain yardage after the catch. You want your slot receivers to be cognizant of multiple defenders, to understand the leverage being played by the man close to them, but also comprehend that they can't drift too far outside. That would play into the hands of the defense and allow the boundary corner to make a play. Here the Steelers are running an option route with tight end Pat Freiermuth out of 12 personnel. You can see the corner eyeing his route. But that's a different story if the boundary corner is locked on. Then Kincaid is able to truly have a two-way go on the play. And as you can see, his fluidity, catch radius, and hands are special. On this play, Utah empties the backfield with Kincaid in the slot weak side. The boundary corner is playing with heavy inside leverage, essentially screaming not only that he's in man coverage, but that he will be playing inside to use the boundary as a defender. So, Kincaid knows that the Ducks are playing man coverage across the board. This allows him to have a two-way go, the ability to break inside or out. He breaks out because the Ducks have a rat defender inside, and no help outside because the corner is taking off with the go route. Getting defenses to respect the slot options, literally and figuratively, is incredibly important to the Bills' offense. Last season, there were too many drives that struggled to get going or stalled out because the Bills didn't have this efficient play aside from when they went to Diggs. Here's a great example of this play by Kincaid on 4th and 10. Kincaid is to the short side of the field, and the defender does a great job of denying access to the middle of the field. Kincaid gets to the top of the route, creates some separation with his physicality, becomes QB friendly by working back to the ball with his hands leading the way. Snares the ball, pulls it into the body, and then slips the tackle for the first down. That's a tight end making a play in a big moment from the slot. Once defenses begin to respect Kincaid in the slot, big plays will open up for others, like we see here from 2020. But let's look at the play design, courtesy of a slide from a coaching clinic that was presented by former Bills coach Phoebe Spector. You can see the dual option routes diagrammed on this play, titled Mobster, with the coaching point being alert for trap corners like we discussed earlier. The Bills would run variations of Mobster a few times, and as soon as they'd catch the corner peeking a little too long, they would hit the go ball behind him. Watch Beasley keep the attention of 3 defenders on this play. He stretched the route pacing out so long that the Niners lost sight of Gabe Davis running the 9 route down the field. That's how much they respected Beasley, and I think in time, defenses will do the same to Kincaid from the slot. Plays like Mobster, stick concepts, and Y options are amazing concepts against zone and match coverages because it allows offenses to regain the upper hand. The purpose of zone coverages are to maintain a numbers advantage at all times. But these concepts allow the offense to still win by winning leverage on a defender in a particular zone. Kincaid will have the opportunity to thrive against these zone coverages. The 2015 Panthers with tight ends Greg Olsen and Ed Dickson ran 12 personnel on 437 plays, which was the second most. In that Super Bowl season, Bills offensive coordinator Ken Dorsey was a quarterback coach. The offensive coordinator was Mike Shula, who is currently a senior offensive assistant in Buffalo. The Panthers scored 84 points, racked up the second highest EPA per play, 10th highest passing EPA, and second highest rushing EPA, all while in 12 personnel. A lot of their success was because they had Greg Olsen as their premier weapon. They utilized Y option and stick concepts a bunch that year. On this play, the Panthers run stick versus cover 3. Olsen is generally given the ability to run a hook or outbreaking route off of the inside linebacker. Since it's cover 3, the slot defender buzzes to the flats, so the backer has no outside help. So Olsen hits the top of the route stem and breaks outside. But you see him break back to the ball on an angle. That's called shaving the cut. This is a coaching point given to the receivers if they feel a defender may be able to undercut the pass. If the receiver breaks at a 90-degree angle, it would leave an opening for the defender to make a play on the ball. On this play, the Panthers run more of a variation of the Y option. Olsen is running an option route against cover 3. On this concept, Olsen has more leeway. He can run inside or out or just hook it up. On this play, he noticed the Cowboys defenders gaining depth, so he just hooked it up. Here it is again against the Giants. Y option is one of the first plays that offenses install when they have an elite tight end. The Ravens have that guy in Mark Andrews, and are the leader of the pack when it comes to using multiple tight ends. The Bills have used it with Beasley, as you see here against the Colts. They dabbled with it last year, as you can see from Week 5 against Pittsburgh, Based on the defensive structure, Diggs knew he was running the option route off of the linebacker. So he stemmed the route inside, got the linebacker to commit to walling him off, then broke outside and gained a nice chunk of yardage after the catch. So the staff has run it with traditional tight ends like Olsen, but also with traditional receivers. So they could absolutely run it with Kincaid. Utah ran a bunch of slot options and Y options against USC. It's the blueprint for how to use Kincaid. Here the Las Vegas native is a number 3 receiver in the slot, and running Y option off the linebacker as the Trojans drop out into cover 3. Kincaid pushed vertical, then shaved the cut, and good thing he did because there's a good chance the linebacker could have made a play on the ball. Same play here against the Gators. This time the throw is low, so Kincaid has to go to the turf to reel it in. As the young tight end said at the combine, his hands are his best trait. Regardless of what level you are targeting him, he is going to catch it. He only dropped 2 passes on 165 targets in his career. That's a 1.6% drop rate. And don't sleep on him as a vertical threat. Kincaid routinely got deep down the seam versus these 2 high shells and made some unbelievable plays. Whether it was cover 2 man, or cover 4, Kincaid stressed the defensive calls down the seam. He gets vertical quickly, but understands the gray areas in the zone, the overlap between a linebacker and safety. He knows when to throttle down for his quarterback, which is why he can do damage after the catch. Most of his production came against zone coverage, but that doesn't mean he can't win versus man. It may be the biggest reason that the Bills drafted him, to be honest. In 2022, the Bills saw cover 1 22.8% of the time, the 8th highest in the NFL. Overall, they saw man coverage 28.9%, the 4th most in the league. This is where the Bills are hoping to create issues when it comes to personnel. In these situations, Kincaid is going to be matched up against a linebacker, nickel corner, or safety. Among tight ends with at least 10 targets against man coverage over the last 2 seasons, Kincaid is 3rd in receptions, 3rd in yards, and 5th in touchdowns. And that's because of his smooth route running, ability to lean into a defender, then create separation and run away from defenders. But if the defender does a great job of staying in his pocket, fans get to see his body control, catch radius, and hands down the field. His physical measurables and skill set extend the length and width of the field. As I mentioned, he was routinely used in the short side of the field, so he had less space to work with. But his skills allow him to be open, even when he really isn't. The smash concept like the slot fade to Kincaid should absolutely be heavily utilized in his rookie season, because of how much of a mismatch he is. He registered a 58.8% contested catch rate over the course of his career, and so often it was on slot fades versus single high man coverages. That's the sort of mismatch coordinators want to have in their arsenal. Dorsey can use Kincaid on these slot fades as shot calls in certain situations, times when he wants to send the home crowd into a frenzy, or flip the field for his offense. Let's face it, Josh Allen hasn't had a target that can routinely do these sort of things. Knox has shown flashes of it, but he doesn't have the body control, contested catch ability, or hands like Kincaid. If Kincaid is matched up on a safety or nickel against these one high coverages, these won't be 50-50 balls. These will be 70-30 opportunities. Kincaid is going to be Allen's best friend because of how QB friendly he is. He will separate in ways that Allen isn't quite used to having. He will assuredly bail Allen out by climbing the ladder and snatching the ball out of the air over a defender in moments when Josh probably shouldn't have even thrown it. It's these sort of plays when covered that speak to Kincaid being number 1 among all receivers and tight ends in this class over the last 2 seasons in percentage of receptions that were first downs or touchdowns from the slot. 74.5% of his receptions from the slot were converted into a first down or a touchdown. Another area where I think Kincaid's skill set will be a huge asset for the Bills' offense is on play-action passes. For whatever reason, the Bills only ran play-action 24.5% of the time last season, which was 23rd overall, well below prior seasons of being in the top 5. In 2021, they ran play-action 34% of the time. In 2020, 33.4%. The 12 personnel sets with Knox and Kincaid, with Allen under center, should bring the nickel and or safety down into the box, especially if they can get the run game going. This should allow the tight ends to slip out more often and outflank the defense. And if Dorsey is able to strategically do that, defenses are going to be in trouble. These plays that get the defense flowing in one direction, but then get Allen on the edge with a run-pass option will keep coordinators up at night. Now, he isn't George Kittle, but Utah used a lot of plays you see in Kyle Shanahan's offense, especially when they are using multiple tight ends. And that's because he can do a lot of the same things with the ball in his hands. Kincaid has incredible body control and the ability to work through traffic just like Kittle. And again, he catches the ball in an advantageous position so that he can gain yards after the catch. Using multiple tight ends will be a major change. In 2022, the Bills targeted tight ends only 14.6% of the time, which was ranked 31st. Heck, they only used 12 personnel 4.1% last year, and that was dead last. So do I think it'll be their new base offense like the Niners or Ravens? Probably not. But having this pivot available was never at their disposal before, let alone having a guy as talented as Kincaid being the cornerstone to said pivot. And if they aren't throwing jump balls or involving Kincaid in the play-action pass game in the red zone, I'll officially declare Dorsey not trying. He is too much of a weapon not to have a package of plays in this critical area of the field. And before we move on to the next segment of this video, please be sure to like, subscribe, and click that bell to be reminded when our content drops. Now on to the most polarizing portion of his game, blocking. So let's start off with the good. Blocking in space. What is so great about having such an athletic big man who can man the slot is that it truly can open up the offensive screen game. Whether the coordinator wants to throw swing screens to running backs or dials up an array of wide receiver screens, Kincaid has shown the ability to carry out those blocking duties. I'm kind of shocked how much people have criticized his blocking. He is absolutely functional as a blocker, especially on the perimeter of the defense when matched up against defensive backs, guys who are not easy to target and lock onto. His athleticism is huge in that regard, which is why 12 personnel sets with him flexed out is also a benefit. Do you trust your defensive backs to avoid the block by Kincaid and or win the one-on-one versus a bigger, more athletic player? Dalton gave his skill players plenty of opportunities to turn the corner on screens or runs that attack the perimeter. Even as a move tight end, asked to lead on counter trays, he has been in solid position to kick out or cut off defenders. Is it always pretty? No, definitely not, but he can get the job done. The issues arise primarily when he is an inline tight end, which the Bills won't need him to be early on, but it's not for the lack of trying. He is a willing blocker. In fact, there are some plays that are textbook, but it's about consistency at the NFL level, and he just isn't there yet. Very rarely would I want him in line at the point of attack, because he just lacks the physicality and strength to win against defensive ends. He can kick out a defender here and there on these zone runs, mainly because the defensive ends are just forcing the cutback. But when defenders want to take the fight to him, he does struggle to hold his own. Far too often we see him pop up out of his stance, which totally exposes his chest, allowing defenders to drive him backwards and play on his side of the line of scrimmage. It's very similar to Knox when he was coming out. But even he was a step ahead in this department. He had a little more dog, a little more fight at the point of attack. But I do think he's developed nicely in this area as well, thanks to tight end coach Rob Boras, a coach that helped Greg Olsen develop into a well-balanced tight end early in his career. It'll be up to him to help refine this portion of Kincaid's game. Early on, the Bills will need to minimize the situations where Kincaid is at the point of attack, mainly on base blocks or blocks where he's one-on-one. It shouldn't be too much of an issue if he's working in combination with another blocker. Getting his footwork and body positioning correct on a consistent basis will quickly improve his efficiency in this area. Since Josh Allen has taken over, the Bills' offense has primarily been an 11 personnel team, so 1 running back, 1 tight end, and 3 wide receivers. And it has been effective for a very long time because of how insanely talented and efficient Beasley was as a slot player. Due to their heavy spread scheme, it was also very one-dimensional and lacked a physical demeanor. As Beasley's skills diminished and his role was absolved, the slot position and the offense's efficiency suffered. Drafting a player like Kincaid who can be plug and play in that slot role will elevate the efficiency back to the levels of years past. But because of his size and skills, the offense will also evolve a bit to mirror the league trends. Kincaid is a natural mismatch even before he breaks the huddle. With him in the game, defenses have to make a decision. They must have a game plan for how to defend him. Defenses will likely defend him with their nickel defense. So right there, the Bills gain an upper hand in the run game from spread or condensed sets. I expect more of a power spread attack, with the Bills using multiple tight end sets, with the ability to run downhill through the heart of the defense when they want to. From a passing standpoint, will coordinators feel comfortable playing man coverage against the Bills as much as they have in the past? If so, Kincaid, among others, will create issues against slot corners, linebackers, and even some safeties. If the defensive coordinator plays it safe and wants to drop into zone coverages, Kincaid will eat. His football intelligence, body control, catch radius, hands, and ability to break tackles after the catch will lead to upper level chain moving. Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott are now in the next phase of their program. Allen's contract is officially on the books, and it was time to pivot. The old offensive approach was highly effective, but it still didn't get the job done. The selection of Dalton Kincaid signals a tweak in their philosophy, a change that aligns with the league trends. Multiple tight ends may not be the Bills' base offense next year, but it'll be a top-tier grouping, and it should be, given the investment in Kincaid and how 12 personnel was the most efficient passing group in 2022, according to Warren Sharp. Over the next few years, Kincaid will be a crucial part of the Bills' offense and the driving force behind the offensive evolution at One Bills Drive.